Sabah everybody and welcome back to the channel. So on Monday, Google decided to announce the brand new Pixel 4a, and they did something that's confusing me a little bit. And I say that because the successor to the Pixel 3a is $50 less, but we get double the internal storage with 128 gigs of internal storage. We have 2 additional gigs of RAM with 6 gigs of RAM. Again, $50 less. Still some of the best photography that we have on a smartphone in a really nice small form factor. And of course, it's a bigger display than the Pixel 3a. Again, $50 less. Sometimes Google does some amazing stuff, and today we're going to check it out. This is the Pixel 4a. Let's check it out. Like and subscribe, and make sure you hit that bell icon so that you're always notified too whenever we have new videos on the channel. So as you can see here, the package was actually pretty simple. This is pretty much what Google sent me, Team Pixel, as you can see right there, hashtag Team Pixel, always. The main thing here essentially is that the device itself starts at $349. Now they have a couple of combos over on Amazon that includes the case. It is sold by Google, but again, the base price is about $350. And you're pretty much going to be getting one variant of this device. It's a black with a colored key built in, as I mentioned to you guys in the introduction, 128 gigs of internal storage. We also have 6 gigs of RAM. The Snapdragon 730G, so definitely an improvement over the 660 from last year. We still have a single camera in the back that's a 12 megapixel sensor, a fingerprint sensor that's present there. It is a plastic body, but it's kind of basically a more of a uniform color as opposed to what we had last year with this one, where you kind of notice right there, there's a dual tone where they were trying to copy the Pixel 4a. So this one is the pinkish color, or the purplish that they had last year, and we'll talk a little bit more about the differences here. The front-facing sensor that we have here is still an 8 megapixel sensor, similar to what we've had last year. So a 12 on the back and an 8 on the front. Let's go ahead and put this one on the side. And what we also have here is a little bit bigger display. We actually have a 5.8-inch display as opposed to what we had last year. And you can see it right there. Even though we have a physically smaller device, it's actually shorter if you think about it as far as the actual dimensions. It actually has a bigger display. Let's go ahead and bring it up. The punch hole camera is present at the top, which gives us a bigger display, but we lost the thickness in the top and the bottom. But we still kept these stereo speakers. So at $350, the first thing I'll probably say right out of the bat is we have a bigger display, it's 5.8 inches. It's kind of that sweet spot between the Pixel 3a and the 3a XL, where the 3a XL was slightly bigger at about almost 6 inches. This one is pretty much in the middle, bigger than the Pixel 3a, but of course definitely smaller chin and bezels, and still stereo speakers. The other thing, of course, is we also have an OLED panel here, which gives us really good darks, but also the ability of using an always-on display on this device and enjoy it again for $350. So a lot of things that you want to keep in mind. So the display is a little bit in between the two devices that we had last year, and they did go with the punch hole camera on the bottom left, which personally I feel like is the right placement, because whenever you're holding the device to play games or watch content, the camera is present on the bottom left, that area that we almost never pay attention to. So it's definitely really nice, and of course an almost full display, an OLED panel, always on display, definitely really nice. And I can't believe that they lowered the price, starting price, and still give us the ability of actually having double storage and more RAM to be able to play around with. So one thing to keep in mind, and even though that we're running the 730G here, not the 765, they did mention on Monday, or at least they teased us with the Pixel 4a 5G as well as the Pixel 5, more information on those coming up in the near future. So we know that those are going to be featuring the Snapdragon 765, or at least a Snapdragon processor capable of supporting 5G even for the Pixel 4a price point. Now, the Snapdragon 730G is definitely an improvement over the 660 from last year, but it's still technically a mid-ranger type of a processor. So even though the performance is here backed by Google Science and Google processing power, one thing you want to keep in mind is that this is not going to be as fast as, let's say, the Snapdragon 865. But let's talk about the fact that this is $350. So when you adjust the experience that you're looking for from a smartphone in 2020 to this, you're going to be pretty happy with what you're getting here. We have a volume rocker on the right with the power button that's above it. It's a colored power button. On the top, one of the microphones for the camera, a 3.5mm headphone jack. We still have that here. On the left, we pretty much have a clean slate, only sided here by the single SIM card option that we have here. Now this does support dual connections, which means an eSIM and an regular SIM. So you can technically have 2 different lines set up on here if you'd like to set it up with the eSIM, as long as your carrier supports it. We have a 3100 milliamp battery that's built in here, supported by the 18-watt PD charger that we have. On the bottom, we have one of the ports here for the microphone, the additional one for the speaker, as well as a USB-C for data and charging. And again, as I mentioned to you guys, we have a 3.5mm headphone jack at the top. The overall experience here, the UI is still Android 10.0, and unfortunately this one is not supported, or at least not available to be able to jump over to the beta of Android 11, which is what I've been running on the Pixel 3a from last year. So this is why the Pixel 3a looks a little bit different when it comes down to the UI. But overall experience is very much the same, and of course this should be receiving Android 11 very soon, or very shortly after it becomes available out of the public beta. The interface is pretty simple, very smooth. Again, 6 gigs of RAM. We have additional RAM from what we had last year. Android 10.0 with the latest security patch update as of August 5th. And we have gesture support, Android and normal gestures. We have the ability of launching the assistant from the corner. Everything works the same way. All of the things that we love about Pixel devices is the fact that they run light, and they also run on really good core specifications. So 730G for the processor, 6 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of internal storage, and of course stereo speakers for great content. And what that means is we're able to support up to 1080p video on YouTube. I'll go ahead and play that on. And now you're able to obviously crop in, pinch in. More of a landscape experience. It does the exact same situation. The secondary screen becomes like a nice prop. Not going to be the loudest speakers, but definitely very nice and very rich. Again, overall, what you're going to be getting here is some of the best experiences what Google has to offer us in 2020. And of course, one of the first devices to receive those features is specifically the Android 11 features that we're talking about. The new updated home screen that we're getting here. So as you can see, this is Android 10.0. Let's go ahead and unlock it here. And we're going to be getting all of those new features. So the ability of turning on different toggle switches. Google Pay is supported with NFC, of course, the power switches that we have, and all the different customizations that we saw. And I'll link you guys the video that I did on the Pixel 3a talking about some of the new features with Android 11. Now, one thing obviously we want to talk about is the camera experience. Most of it hasn't changed much, but we definitely have some new processing. So I want to share with you guys a few examples of those. But before we get there, the front-facing video is pretty much the same experience. Let's go ahead and switch over. So we have a capability of going up to 1080p 30 frames per second on the front, and that's pretty much the only experience we're able to get. We actually can't customize it any different. If we switch over on the back, we have the ability of jumping in between 4K at 30 frames per second, 1080p at 30 or 60 frames per second, and of course, because we have that additional storage, now we don't have to worry about running out. The camera is again 8 megapixel front-facing camera with portrait support on the front and on the back. I do want to mention though that for some reason whenever we do a crop, so if I switch over to portrait, so here's an image, if I jump over on portrait, you notice that the zoom level is very strong here, except here, if I do, let's say I switch it over here, I'll switch over to the main camera. So this is the crop view right now. If I want to jump into portrait with the front-facing camera, it actually doesn't zoom in as much as it does with the back sensor. So something to do with the field of view, so just keep in mind if you're doing portrait imagery with the front-facing sensor, you're probably going to get a little bit better experience as it's not as cropped in as the back sensor. So we're going to start off with the front-facing camera. The front-facing camera maximum resolution is going to be 1080p at 30 frames per second. There's really not much you can change with it, but it should be pretty good. It does actually crop in a little bit to give us a little bit better, I would say, stabilization if you're trying to vlog. But at arm's length, it's actually not bad. You're able to see me, and this would be the furthest I'm able to do it if I extend my arm all the way. Still, very, very good. Let's switch over to the back-facing sensor. Now, if you switch over to the rear-facing camera, the maximum resolution here is 4K 30 frames per second, but you're also able to drop it down to 1080p 60 frames, 1080p 30 frames per second, so a few more options than what we had before. Still a single camera in the back, even though we have a square setup similar to the other Pixel devices, but it should be able to be pretty good overall with the experience that you're getting here. On top of the fact that now we have 128 gigs of internal storage, which means we have way more than enough storage to be able to take as many pictures as you want. The 3A had a big limitation, which was the 64 gigs of internal storage. Now it's doubled. Same thing, and actually a little bit cheaper. So as you can see right there, the overall experience is actually really good. Pixels have always been some of the best cameras on the market, and I'm almost tempted to say that in the price point that the Pixel 4a is jumping into at $350, that this will be the best photography camera on the market. Not video, photography. For still imagery, Pixels are always the best. They do good in video, but they don't do the best, as I feel like some other competitors give us a little bit more flexibility. We have a single lens on the back, which unfortunately means no wide-angle lens, no telephoto. So the experience is limited sometimes by hardware, but also by the fact of the price point. So Google had to make some certain tailoring into the experience of a Pixel to be able to bring the price down for us. Last thing I do want to share with you guys is this case that I did a video. Actually, we found this case coincidentally on Ghost Tech's website a few weeks ago during one of my podcasts on the Saturday Morning with Tech. And I did pick up the case, as I mentioned in my comments. So here it is. It's made by Ghost Tech. It does have a nice little kickstand. And of course, easy case to be able to get, and it's simple, and it fits really nice. There's a lanyard option here if you'd like to use that. Access to the fingerprint sensor. The camera cutout is pretty good. Microphone, as well as a headphone jack, as well as the speakers on the bottom. really good grip, and of course it has some additional protections that are obviously mentioned on the back right there. So kickstand ready, HD clear option here, a diamond grip, raised camera option, so to be able to protect the camera, and detailed cutout based on the device. And of course, the red coloring are intended to basically protect our device. So for content consumption, this is definitely going to be great. You just turn it on and use it. And when you're not using it, close it up and use it, and the device works great. So definitely a great option. I'll give you guys, of course, a link to that in the description below. The things that a lot of people were covering about the Pixel 4a is, of course, that it's a budget-friendly device. $349 is absolutely a great deal when it comes down to a Pixel experience. So when I say the word Pixel, I'm talking about what Google does best, the best features that Google has to offer on a device at a $350 price point. Now, we have an improvement on the processor from last year. We have the Snapdragon 730G. We have 128 gigs of internal storage. We have 6 gigs of RAM. All three of these things have upgraded from last year. Smaller bezels on the top and the bottom, as well as on the chin and forehead situation, so definitely a bigger display, smaller physical size than last year's Pixel 3a. So that's something to keep in mind. Last year's Pixel 3a had massive chins and foreheads, which now we no longer have. We have a punch hole camera, which I feel like is in the right spot. The top left is always going to be the better position. The top middle is a arguably kind of a position that you may end up finding it, that it basically covers some of your notifications. But the top left, when you hold the device sideways, automatically makes it so that you never even see the camera when you're watching content. So stereo speakers, 6 gigs of RAM, a lot of the specifications again I'm talking about here are great for this price point. There's only one model, there is no XL. There is going to be a 5G model as well as a Pixel 5. We'll find out more information about them later on. But now that I've had the device and I want to be able to spend some more time with it, I wanted to give you guys real quick some of the things that you may have missed in other coverage about the device. Is the fact that for $350 you are getting a lot from Google. And I don't know why, but I love this trend and I really hope Google keeps this going. They're lowering the price on the successor of last year's Pixel 3a. So absolutely the best situation you can do, especially from our side, because we get the benefit and we get all the cool things from it. Like and subscribe as usual. Thank you very much for the support. And of course, thank you to Team Pixel and Made by Google for allowing me to have the Pixel 4a. And of course, share with you guys my content and my appreciation of all things Google on this channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. And of course, links to everything will be in the description below.